Well, welcome to this webinar, and what I really want to cover off on with this particular Veritas Psych Up webinar is really a wrap-up of Are You OK Day. We had Are You OK Day in the very recent past, and I guess most of us were focused and hopefully very mindful on that day about mental health and well-being issues with people in our personal life as well as in the workplace where we work, and also with friends, because it is important. It's spot fires, as we know, become bushfires when nothing is done about the spot fire, and they're just left to burn and get out of control. And it's very much the same with mental health and well-being issues. If we don't do anything about them, then what can start as a small spark, or can start as a small thing, a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of depression, whatever, can build into really a psychological disorder, which can be very difficult for people to deal with and needing quite, at times, quite intensive professional involvement. So I've got a presentation that we use on Are You OK Day, and I'm just going to refer to bits and pieces of that, but I really want to talk about the importance of not just leaving the conversations around Are You OK to Are You OK Day. It's something that we need to be practicing and be very aware of 365 days a year, because we never know, and you never know when someone is going to present with some symptoms, when a situation or situations in individuals' lives are going to become major challenges for them, either of an attitudinal, from an attitudinal perspective, an emotional perspective, or a behavioural perspective. We can start to really quite run amok if things build and build and build within us. The stresses, the pressures, and the tensions build within us. Now, how we can remember how stressful something is going to be for individuals is by just remembering a simple acronym, IUD. And it stands basically for the importance of an event, the uncertainty involved in that event or those events, and the duration that the uncertainty runs on for. So the more important, the more uncertainty, and the longer the duration of potentially stressful situations, events occurring in someone's life, the more potential there is for high levels of stress, tension, and then mental health and poor well-being outcomes for that individual. It's just a simple little way of reflecting every now and then what might be happening in our own life, for example, but also in the lives of others around us, whether that's in the workplace or at home. And by simply having the conversation and engaging with someone around Are You OK? Is everything all right? Do you need to chat about anything? Do you need to talk about anything? We can actually hopefully prompt and cue the person to dealing with the issues that they are dealing with, rather than just letting them bottle up. And then those, what could be rather small concerns that they have, grow into major anxieties or depressive symptoms within them, and then needing treatment, and can be quite debilitating, not only for the individuals experiencing the symptoms, but for those around who are trying to deal with the individual who's experiencing those symptoms. So my words, I guess, to you really that I'd like you to take away from this webinar is be mindful around Are You OK? And asking that question 360 days, 65 days a year if you need to, or when you might need to. Don't avoid the situation. What often happens when we avoid the situation is things do escalate, and small things can become large things. And also, we often miss the opportunity to intervene with someone in a very personal and very solution-focused and positive manner. people often feel, as we know, a little anxious. They can feel a little guilty. They might feel a little embarrassed in bringing up situations or how they're feeling about certain things in life, because they realise that down the road, Harry or Henrietta has just had a diagnosis of a cancerous growth. And they may be feeling that what they're experiencing, and at times they may be unaware of why they're experiencing feeling so down, feeling so out of sorts, feeling so anxious, heart palpitations, not being able to sleep, concentration going, feeling guilty all the time, feeling that they are not worthy much of the time, that they're not as bright as others, that others are coping far more better with life and the challenges that are thrown at them in life than they are. And if you're alone with those thoughts, then they can be quite catastrophizing and overtake us. And then they become overvalued ideas. And suddenly we're thinking about the negative and filling our self-talk up with negatives and with how terrible, awful and shocking things are. And then, unfortunately, very quickly, we can start to develop a mental health disorder that can, if we let it go, can severely interfere with our sense of well-being. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen with you. So hopefully you'll be able to see what I have up on the screen. If you can't, it doesn't matter. But it's just, I guess, a few thoughts around the whole business of are you okay? I'm Grant Brecht, as it says on this slide. I'm a clinical psychologist and head of the clinical and consulting services at Veritas. So simply put, are you okay conversations don't have to be overly difficult. They don't have to be overly intrusive. And if we do them correctly, we don't have to worry about the impact on others, other than hopefully the impact having a very positive outcome for the individual, where they feel comfortable in talking about what is happening to them. Now, when we go into these conversations, obviously, what we don't want to do is act as if we are a psychologist or a counsellor ourselves and that we know what is going on with the person and give them some sort of quasi-diagnosis of what might be happening with them. That's not the idea. The idea is, as we see in those 4 steps, is to literally ask them, are you okay? Step 2 is really listening to the response, prompting them where possible to tell us a little bit more about what is happening and how they might be feeling. And if we understand that, to be able to empathise with them. But even if we don't understand really why they may be feeling a certain way about something, then what we can also do is we can say, okay, I can see that has really upset you, that has really got to you, and that you're having, it appears that you're having a great deal of trouble coping with that at the moment. And then the next step is, once we have listened to them and once we have allowed them to express how they're feeling and what's happening for them. And a useful way of doing that is simply by asking Socratic questions around what, where, how and why. What actually is happening? Why do you feel it's happening? When did it start? How long has it been going on? How is it making you feel, or how are you feeling about what is happening? What are you experiencing? Those simple sorts of questions, just so that the person has an opportunity to express themselves, to get out the pressure and the tensions that might be and the anxieties that might be inside of them. It's like a balloon. If we get a balloon and it's deflated, and we pump a little bit of air in, blow a little bit of air into it and seal off the end of the balloon, there's not a lot of damage to the balloon. It's made of rubber, it can stretch. If we keep doing that, however, blowing a little bit of air into the balloon and sealing the balloon off, after every bit of air, the balloon gradually gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually it will burst. And it's the same with us as human beings. If we collect pressures and stresses and anxieties and depressive symptoms long enough, then we can get to a point where it all becomes too much and we have a breakdown and we burst and we find it very, very difficult to cope with what normally would be everyday situations that we might face on a fairly regular basis. Now, the third step, but with the balloon, before I leave that analogy, even if the balloon gets half full and we suddenly let the air out, the balloon, runs amok. It sort of blows all over the place. And we can do the same. We can get very irritable. We can have angry outbursts, tearful outbursts. We might start to withdraw from people. We might start to make very poor decisions. So we also don't have to get to the point where we're bursting with anxieties and pressures. But if we suddenly feel that, we can no longer cope, or we start to engage in behaviours that aren't terribly constructive and especially negative and irrational thinking processes, then we can be in quite a spot of bother. The third step is to encourage action on the part of the person. What do you think you can do about it? Have you thought about what your options might be? Have you thought about seeing a GP? Have you thought about using your employee's assistance program through your workplace? Have you thought about talking to the person about what your concerns are and what's leading to you feeling this way? And then the fourth step is that hopefully, if they have committed to some action to look after themselves and to take care of themselves, then the fourth thing to do really is, in a few days' time or a week's time, is to check in with them just to see how they're going. Don't just let things lie. Don't just assume that everything is okay and that everything is fine, but actually check in with the person to make sure that they are fine and going well. Just, I guess, a few points around when we're, beginning any conversation around, are you okay? How are you going? Just make sure that you're in a good headspace. Don't do it when you're angry about something, or you might be really upset with a person because they've done something that you've got really irritated by. Make sure that you've got the time and willingness to actually be able to listen and genuinely listen and allow some time for the person to express what it is that is going on with them. Give them time to be able to express some of those feelings and what is happening to them. Also, be ready that if they do say, no, I don't want to talk about things, I'm okay, I'm fine, just reassure them that you're there if they need to at any time, that you've just picked up that things mightn't have been quite right, and maybe remind them that, if it's in the workplace, that they've got an EAP. If it's a friend, that they can go to their doctor and get a mental health plan is also very useful conversation to be able to have without going any deeper into the process that might be there. And when you're asking them about what's happening, don't get too deep into things or too weird, or bring on a Goldilocks type syndrome. Just be relaxed and friendly. Keep your affect, your voice tone, etc., nice and calm, nice and relaxed. Very simple questions. How you're going, what's been happening. And remember that you don't have to stop their suffering. You don't have to stop the anxieties or stop the tensions and the pressures they may be feeling. You're just assisting them to become aware that others are observing what is happening with them, that you're concerned about them, and that, getting some assistance for what they are going through could be a very useful next step for them to take. In listening, it's very important that we take what the person says as being very serious and take it very seriously, even if we may not feel upset, even if we don't think the circumstance is big enough or grave enough or heavy enough to really be upsetting or to bring on the sort of symptoms that they might be expressing to us. Don't make those judgments. Don't say, well, look, that's not really that big. You've got really nothing to worry about. You'll be okay. Those sort of judgmental comments are really very, very unhelpful. Just acknowledge that things seem to be tough for them at the moment. And those open-ended questions, as I spoke about, the who, what, where, when and why, are really useful questions to ask. And then to be able to just summarise and reflect what you've heard and what you believe the person is going through before you move to that next section, which is really encouraging action on the person's part. So the most use you can be to someone who's struggling here is really to help them explore what the options are. So some people are a bit pre-contemplative or might be contemplating doing something about it, but really haven't thought how or what they could do and how they might go about doing that. So during this encouraging action stage, it's a great opportunity for you to help them understand what their options might be and what they might need to do to implement those options. So certainly if someone has been feeling down or out of sorts for 2 weeks or more, then it is very important to encourage professional intervention, because it could well be that the person is now going into a diagnosable depressive anxiety or comorbidity that is a compilation of the two of those things together, or maybe even something different might be going on for them. And remember, what you're not there to do is to rescue them. You're there to help them help themselves. That's a very important thing to think about, because it's very difficult to rescue people. Every now and then we need to, if they're at their wits' end, put them in a car, take them to the accident emergency department, or dial 000 and get an ambulance around to take them to hospital to really help them. But normally what our role is to help others gain some insights into what is happening, to gain some awareness, to accept what is happening, and then to help them take the relevant actions that they might need to do something about what is happening. And then obviously the check-in, which is that fourth part, is just make a diary note that you need to just follow up with the person and check in with how they're going. Is there anything else they might need from you? Is there anything else you could do for them? And don't make sure at this stage that you don't pry if they are tell you that they are using the employee assistance program, or they've been to a doctor and got a mental health plan to see a psychologist. Don't pry into what's going on. Just say things like, oh, that's great. That's beaut that you're looking after yourself. It's beaut that you've taken that step. Very proud of you. Hope it's going okay. And remember, I'm always there to have a chat to if you need to as well. So that's basically what the Are You OK model is all about. And what we're doing, as this slide shows, if you can see it, is it's what we call the AAA model of personal growth. And that is that what we're doing is we're helping the individual gain awareness into what is happening with them, acceptance of what is going on and what the benefits might be of doing something about what is happening, and then helping them to develop a bit of an action plan along the lines of what can they implement in the near future to make sure that they get the appropriate assistance for what is happening there with them. So it's really quite interesting. People can be in one of these 4 quadrants. I've got 4 quadrants up now. One is on a performance quadrant. That is the vertical axis. The horizontal axis is a well-being, the well-being axis. And so people that we might be dealing with can fall into one of these 4 areas, which we call really languishing, floundering, struggling, or thriving. And when someone is really languishing, it's generally that they might be healthy, but they're just not performing. And that means that their state of well-being can be quite high, but their performance might be low. And that could be the fact that there's lacking skills, they're rusting out in their role or in their job, they've done it too much. Things aren't exciting enough for them in their personal life, they're just going through the motion. too much. And so what we might need to concentrate and assist someone to do there is to get more oomph and motivation back in their life, what's missing from their life and what needs to be there, either in their work-related or personal life. When someone is floundering, that's when they're in a real unwell state. The languishing state we call a stalled state, and the unwell state is what we call floundering, when an individual is low on performance and low on mental well-being and mental health. And that means that the person can be in quite an unhealthy state and not performing well. And that's often when people do take time off work or might be coming to work and bursting into tears, struggling big time and making excuses for why things aren't the way they are, getting quite irritable and frustrated either with themselves or others. When people are in what we call a struggling state, it's what we call the unsustainable state. And people might be unhealthy from a mental perspective, not coping terribly well, but they are actually performing quite okay. So they're holding up. They're trying to get things done either in their personal life, as a parent, as a partner, trying to get things done, but feeling very ordinary, feeling quite depressed, feeling very anxious about things and really struggling with those things, but trying to keep them to themselves so they show others that they are struggling big time with what is happening there. And when people are in a state of thriving, it's what we call the sweet spot, where people are performing well, involved in meaningful pursuits in their life, either in the workplace or in their personal life, and are in a state of well-being, mental, physical and emotional health. And that's a place where we want ourselves to be and others to be most of the time, and for as long as possible, but knowing that everybody is fallible. It doesn't matter how old we are, how experienced we are, what sort of role we've got, and how well we've been coping in the past. Things can come at us, and we are all fallible. And so we need to be very aware of that and be ready to intervene with others and to help others be the very best that they can be. Thriving, I just want to talk a little bit about this because we can be a helper, and without waiting until we have to say are okay. If someone comes to us with a concern, with a problem, or seems to be struggling a little bit, even if mental health is quite good, then if we are positively engaged with that person, if we are being humanistic and encouraging with them and help them work out what is going on and do something about it and get to the next level of well-being, to the next level of performance, then we could be doing that person a great service as well. So performance basically is around engagement and pursuit, and helping people remain engaged and connected with others and connected with their meaningful pursuits is a great gift that we can give to someone. And helping people stay in a sense of well-being, we can remember by what the important areas of well-being are, we can remember by the PERMA V model. And that is, if people are to be in a state of well-being, they need positive emotions, they need constructive and rewarding relationships, they need a sense of achievement in what they're doing, they need meaningful and purposeful pursuits in their personal and work-related life, and they need engagement with others. We are social animals and we need engagement and connection with others. Now, that varies for how we go about that engagement and connection between introverts and extroverts, but we're all social animals and we need to do it. We just deal with engagement and connection with others differently. Some are very gregarious and going, get their energy from being with people, and others are more quiet and thoughtful and get their energy from thinking through things and often being by themselves to work through what they've just heard and putting that into a paradigm for themselves that makes sense, and then away they go. So the introverts are often the more quieter ones, but can still be very engaged and very connected and are very vital in a team context. And the last point there is around maintaining our vitality. So that is eating well, exercising well, not drinking too much alcohol, making sure we're getting good sleep, making sure that our thinking and our attitudinal base is flexible, adaptable, rational, positive, and solution focus in terms of the affirmations that we carry around with ourselves. So look, that's really all I wanted to go over. It was really just a wrap up of the Are You OK day, and the events around that are very important. But really the message, I guess, that's important to me is that we maintain that focus, that we maintain a focus of being humanistic, encouraging and collaborative with others, and asking the question, are you okay, any day of the year. 365 days a year, those things can pop up. So let's be very aware of making sure that we help people deal with spot fires in terms of mental health and their well-being before they become bushfires. So the very best to everybody. Thank you for listening to this webinar in the Psych Up series, and I look forward to catching up with you next time. So safe travels, everybody. Take care and look after yourself through these wild times of COVID. Bye.